Hello students, welcome to SRIRAM's IAS, welcome to this PYQ series. So I am again here with PYQ of Indian Polity. At every day at 4 o'clock we are coming up with this PYQ series for you for your upcoming prelims examination. Do not forget the date, 25th of May 2025. PYQ helps you to know the important subject, the context, the trends of the examination and what UPSC is going to ask, how much UPSC is going to ask from which subject and what kind of question UPSC asks. So this is PYQ of Indian Polity. Let's begin. Question number 1. In the context of India, which of the following is the correct relationship between rights and duties? So rights and duties. So now you know duties has been inserted in the Indian Constitution by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act in 1976. Rights has been there, they are justiciable, starts from article number 12, continues till article number 35. We know about rights, we know about duties, so let's try to answer this question. Rights are correlative to duties. What do you think? Is there a correlation between rights and duties? Do you think the rights which are given to you are absolute, or you should also have some duties which you should follow, some sort of responsibilities which are necessary for a citizen of a country to follow? There is always a correlation between the rights and the duties. The rights has to go hand in hand with the duties. There shall not be any kind of rights without liabilities or without responsibilities. In a democratic country, in a country which follows ethical principle, moral principle, constitutional morality, duty is of paramount importance. Although in Indian Constitution these duties are not justiciable, the courts do not enforce these duties. They do enforce the fundamental right. Under Article 32, under Article 226, if a person's fundamental right is infringed, the person can directly approach the Supreme Court under 32 and directly to the High Court under 226. So rights are very important. They hold a great position, a fundamental position in the Indian Constitution to limit the power of the state. But at the same time, the rights which are given to the citizens must also follow their duty. So there is always a correlation between rights and duties, and that is the reason why statement A is the correct statement. But let us read another statements as well. Rights are personal and hence independent of society and duty. No, they cannot be. They cannot be. Rights are although personal, but at the same time one facet of the rights are always involving society with it. One person's right shall not at any cost infringe upon the right of the other person. For example, your right to freedom of speech and expression, it's a very beautiful right which helps you to grow to your optimum limits, but at the same time that must not become an infringement upon the right of another person, or you should not use your right in such a way that it creates some law and order problem, or it is hurting the sovereignty, unity of the country, or it's against the morality. Okay, so rights are always correlated with duties. They are not independent of society. Rights are not independent of society. Rights, not duties, are important for advancement of personality of citizen. Rights and duties both are important. If you want to become a complete human being, you should not only focus on your rights but also on the duties which you have. Duties, not rights, are important for the stability of the state. See, rights are also important for the stability of the state. If the state becomes too strong that it infringes upon the rights of the citizens, then what is the meaning of having a constitution? What is the meaning of having the provision of constitutionalism which limits the power of the government, which curbs the power of the government so that the people can enjoy their fundamental right and help the country grow, help themselves to grow to the optimum limit possible. So statement A is the correct statement. Under the Indian Constitution, now we are jumping on to the second question. Under Indian Constitution, concentration of wealth violates what? So concentration of wealth, of course, it's not a good idea. Now you should know what is concentration of wealth. That simply means if this is the population pool, only 1%, 2% or 10% of the people have majority of the wealth, whereas the rest 99% or 95%, whatever the number can be, do not have much wealth. So the top 1%, they are holding 90% of the wealth or majority of wealth. It can be 60%, can be 70%, can be 90%. But the remaining 99%, what are they holding? Very less. So that is what is called concentration of the wealth, that the wealth is concentrated or the means of production is concentrated in few hands. It's not a good idea. That is not good for a democracy. That is not good for a healthy country like India. And that is the reason why directive principle of state policy clearly mentions, if you see, directive principle of the state policy, article number 39, C, mentions that there shall not be any sort of concentration of wealth. Any law made by the state shall not promote the concentration of wealth or of means of production. The means of production should also be distributed among all, should not be in the hand of a few people who are wealthy people in the society. It's a very important concept. You must understand this. So B is our answer. Directive principle of state policy is something which the state must keep in its mind while making the law. So when the state is making law, it should keep in mind one thing, that the law should not result in concentration of wealth or the concentration of means of production in few hands. I hope you're getting it. It's not the right, neither the duties, but it's the directive principle of state policy. B is our answer. In India, separation of judiciary from the executive is enjoined by. So separation of power, that the different organ of the government holds different power. The executive executes, implements the policies, the laws made by the legislature. The executive does not make the law. Neither the judiciary implements the policies. They have their own separate jurisdiction. They have their own separate mandates. They all have to follow their own duty. They should not infringe upon the jurisdiction of others. That is what is called separation of power. So separation of power from judiciary. Earlier at those times, during medieval period, what used to happen? There used to be a king. And that king used to have both the powers, the executive power and the judicial power as well. And many times he was the one who was making the laws also. So all the powers, everything was concentrated in the hand of the king. Now with the coming of the democracy, it is the rule of law, not the rule of man. And because of rule of law, there has to be a rule book, which is the Constitution of India, and it very clearly says that there has to be separation of power. Where it is written? It is written article number 50. If you see this article, separation of power from judiciary and executive has to be done. So directive principle of state policy, again this is the answer. Consider the following statements regarding directive principles of state policy. The principles spell out the socio-economic democracy in India. Of course, socio-economic democracy, how this democracy comes into being. When the state, when it is making law, the state keeps in mind these directive principles, that whatever laws you are making must benefit the society in such a way that the benefits are equally distributed among the population. There shall not be any kind of concentration of wealth or the means of production. And that is where socio-economic democracy comes in. That the fruits of society, the fruits of economy are distributed to all, not to few. They are not holding the majority chunk of the power or wealth, but there is a wide distribution of that power. And that is the reason why directive principle of state policy ensures socio-economic democracy in the country. Provisions, now this is correct. we are going to see the second one. Provisions contained in these principles are not enforceable by any court. Now this is also correct. These are just for the parliament to keep in mind, or the state legislatures to keep in mind while making the law. Directive principles of state policy are not enforceable by the court. That if any directive principle of state policy is infringed, the person must not move to the court saying that the directive principles of state policy has been curtailed or has not been followed. Fundamental rights are justiciable, not the directive principles, neither the duties. Justiciability simply means if that particular principle is infringed, you can move to the court, and the court should pass an order or a decree or a writ saying that the government must not infringe upon the directive principle. Now that requirement is not there. That is there for fundamental right. The enforceability of fundamental right has to be ensured by the courts, but not of directive principles. So both of them are correct. Fifth one, with reference to the provisions contained in part 4th of the Constitution of India. Now again, directive principles. Part 4. Part 3rd we know, that is fundamental rights. Part 4th is directive principles of state policy, and part 4A is fundamental duty. I hope you are getting it. They shall be enforceable by the courts. No, they are not enforceable by court. We have just now seen it is not enforceable by court. Directive principle of state policy or part number 4 is not enforceable by court. They shall not be enforceable by any courts. Now, this is good. This is correct. Principles laid down in this part are to influence making of laws by the state. Yes, these are the principles which should be kept in mind by the legislature while making the law. And hence, third one is correct. So, 2 and 3 are correct. The ideals of welfare state in the Indian Constitution is enshrined in its what? The welfare state we are talking about here. So where will you see this welfare state? Again, it is the directive principle of state policy where you will see the concept of welfare state. What is a welfare state? If you see article number, maybe it is article 38 where you will see this concept of welfare state. And in so many other articles this is reflected. Welfare state is a concept where there is a commitment of the government to work for the upliftment of the people. There is a commitment that there shall not be any kind of concentration of wealth or concentration of means of production. There has to be a wide distribution of all the resources, material resources of the country throughout the population, throughout the different sections of the population. That is what is welfare state. A welfare state is not only a limited term, and it should not be seen from the prism of a economic philosophy that welfare state is only linked with socialism. No, in a capitalist economy also there can be welfaristic state. Okay, that the state has some commitment towards the citizens, towards upliftment of the citizens, for the optimum benefit of the citizens. The policy has to be made, or the laws has to be made. That is what is welfare state, and hence directive principle of state policy is the correct answer. With reference to the Constitution of India, the directive principle of state policy constitute limitations upon. Now, directive principle of state policy do not constitute limitation upon anything. They are not justiciable. The fundamental rights, on the other hand, they constitute limitations upon the power of the government, power of the executive, power of the legislature. That is what is the concept of constitutionalism is all about. Limited government. So what are you limiting in that government? The limitation of the executive power, the limitation of the parliamentary power. That The law should not be arbitrary in nature. The executive actions should not be arbitrary in nature. They must be based on some reason, based on some logic. They must be non-arbitrary. That is where the whole concept of limiting the power of the state comes in, and directive principle of state policy does not do it. It is the fundamental right which does this. They are enforceable by the court of law, that upon their infringement you can approach the court and court can pass a writ for your benefit. So neither legislative function nor executive function can be limited by the directive principle of state policy, and hence D is our answer. Which of the following statements are true of the fundamental duties of the Indian citizen? Now they are asking about duties. Part 4A, Article 51A. That's where the duties are mentioned. A legislative process has been provided to enforce these duties. No, these are duties to be followed by the citizen of India. There is no legal or executive formula or mechanism to implement these duties. So this statement is not the correct statement. There is no legislative process, there is no executive mechanism, there is no, nothing to implement the duty. The duties has to be followed by the citizens themselves. It has to come voluntarily from within them, that it is my country and that is the reason why I should abide by the constitution and its ideals, why I should, it is my country and I should respect the national anthem, the national flag. It is my country and that is the reason why I should respect the women and the dignity of women. All those things has to come voluntarily from the citizens within. There is no mechanism in the constitution to implement the fundamental duties. They are correlative to legal duties. No, that's also not correct. Legal duties again forces you to do something or to stop you from doing something. There is no legal mechanism for fundamental duties in the constitution, and hence this statement is also not correct. Both of them are wrong. So neither of them are correct. Ninth, to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India is a provision made in. It is made in the fundamental duties. It is the fundamental duties where a person promises to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India. I hope you are getting this. So you must read the fundamental duties. It's a very important part of your preparation. You must know the differences between fundamental rights, fundamental duties and directive principle of state policy. You must know all the provisions which are there for them. How are they implemented? Are fundamental duties implemented? Yes or no? Fundamental rights are implemented independently or through some act? What about the directive principle of state policy? How are they implemented? You should know everything. Okay? That is the reason why we are studying the previous year question, for you to make a mind note about what kind of questions are asked, and for you to become more intelligent about the patterns and the trends of UPSC, how they are asking the question, what kind of question they are asking, what you have to study while you are preparing for UPSC. Now coming to the last question, here D is correct. Under which of the following articles of the Constitution of India has the Supreme Court of India placed right to privacy? Now this privacy judgment has came in 2017 in the Puttaswamy case. Supreme Court has declared right to privacy as another facet of right to life and personal liberty. Article number 21. There are so many interpretations of this article. It's not only about right to privacy, but it's about right to life and human dignity. So when you are living does not mean animal existence. It means living with dignity, and a dignified life covers so many things. Privacy is one of the facets of it. There has to be clean water, there has to be clean air for you. Everything comes under article number 21. Clean air now is also a fundamental right. You should have clean air. State should make some kind of provision. State should make some kind of, policy to make the air clean, because it's again a fundamental right. Again, another interpretation of Article 21 of the Constitution. So you should remember these things. Okay. So thank you very much for joining me for this PYQ session. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock another subject will be relayed live for you all, and keep watching this PYQ so that you can uplift yourself and your preparation for your upcoming prelims examination of 2025. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.